Okay, so no worries anyway. We're going to go through what we covered and continue to maybe finish the application. I think we have done a bit of it and stopped halfway for the reason that I think we're losing time, so we needed to close up. Where was it? Do I remember the workspace name? I think it was called save something. This I think we did this in a different bootcamp. Okay, let me try to find the file. I think I shared this. Yeah, but we'll have the contract address. Should be able to. Even if we don't have the code, you should be able to get what is really going on in the contract. Just put the contract address here. So I remember where the application is. I think the application is here. Might have been here. It's right here. Okay. So this is our app. Those are our here last time we started this. We weren't able to finish because of the time. It was really late and we had to stop. So I'm going to get through it, and then later on Tracy has something she wants to share with us. But yeah, so this is it. Okay, let me just turn it on so that we can see what the interface looks like. Okay, just a moment. I hope my voice is loud enough. All right, thank you, Agatha. Okay, as it opens, okay, it's trying to open. Let me check if my application is on. Yeah, it's on. So let me put it here. I think those that were here the other time remember this interface. We're using it to connect and disconnect our wallets and then deposit. That's where we stopped. We were depositing funds on the contract. So I'm just going to get the contract address from here. Then I think we put it here. Yeah, it's right here. And I put it back here. Should be able to see what's on the contract right now. So this is it the one? This is no. Well, I'm supposed to actually have the code here. I think I might have done it in a different browser. Well, issues I have two machines, so I keep switching between them. Sometimes I lose track of where some information is. Yeah, but let me find it. If I can find the code, if I can find the be able to find it, I think I shared it somewhere. Might have shared it somewhere. Oh yeah, it's here. I think this was our contract. Really short, but very powerful. The things it's able to do. Let me just rewrite it here. So yeah, that's the contract, and the contract address is that one, I believe. Let me check. I think we have deposited some tokens. Maybe we withdrew them. Yeah, we might have withdrawn them. So I can also check my Explorer and see the activity this contract has had. I think it was deployed on, we deployed it on what? On Sepolia. So we should be able to see everything that happened on this contract before through this address. Okay, so now I want us to handle the rest of the functions. It's actually necessary that we get the code because some of the functions some of the function names are very specific. You're supposed to have the very specific function name for it to be able to interact with the contract. MetaMask. I don't know what it does this. Okay. So I want this wallet to open because it's the one that I want us to use. But if it fails, I'm going to have to switch to another one. Okay, so this is the contract address. Is it? Ends with E3. Yes, that's our contract address, as you can see up here. So it should be able to show us the transactions that were made. I don't know why it's not. Are we on? We're on Ethereum mainnet. We're supposed to be on Sepolia main. Sepolia rather. So there are a number of testnets as well. As you can see, these are all Ethereum testnets. And yeah, here now I can see the transactions that were made. So we did this 2 days ago. This is exactly the amount that I remember we transferred. Yeah, that's it. We said we transferred it in. I don't see the transaction for removing that amount. But yeah, as you can see, this is the amount. I remember, do you all remember that we actually transferred 0.01 ETH? Let me attempt to connect and see what. Okay, I might have to use a different browser. Trying to okay. So this mistake I keep making, I think I keep forgetting. Anyway, I keep forgetting these testnet test account passwords. I just really design create these for code, but I never take them seriously. Yeah, I have to do that. Okay, some new advancements have been made in MetaMask. I hope with some time we may be able to go through them, but I don't know. So I'm just going to install it again. Keep forgetting that. It's not fair. All right. So we're left with just a single function. Then, yeah, after that, we can have questions and see how to further understand the integration part. And even Solidity itself, there's a number of things that we can't go through in a short bootcamp, but this was just to give you a foundation for those that are interested in development, and with the tools that we shared for continuing to build, the resources that we shared, you can continue to build on your own, you can continue to educate yourself. And if you have questions, there will always be someone to help. That's the advantage of Web3. The community is quite open, and it's easy to reach anyone. Everyone is somewhere online. You just have to know where they are, but you will always be able to find someone to help. That's the advantage of Web3. And yeah, I believe it's an opportunity for us to grow faster. So if you're interested in learning how to write smart contracts or anything within the Web3 ecosystem, we have a number of communities. On ChainCon is available, so you can always find someone different in any specific domain, they'll be willing to help you learn whatever it is that you want to learn. So I'm going to open the application here because this is where I want to put my new wallet. I hope I remember this one. Three. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to just skip this, but you shouldn't skip it if you create your account for the very first time, because that's where your seed phrase is. You're supposed to know it. It's supposed to secure your account. So let me get some Sepolia here. This is one of the most open faucets. You can always come here and get tokens whenever you need. Although there's a restriction, it's supposed to be to give you tokens only once a day, every account that you have. Alright. So I'll just switch to Sepolia. And yeah, should be able to see my tokens there, 0.05. In a moment, they've been sent, yes. Let me just close this. I can always open it from here. So we're now going to make the integration, 0.05, thank you. So when I attempt to connect the wallet, you should be able to request. So I think we had done this the other day, unless someone has a question about these two buttons. So when I click connect, there's some functionality I could add so that it displays the connected wallet here, so that someone at least knows on the interface that this is the account that is connected to my application or the site that I'm using right now. So you can see here, it shows you that this account is connected. It can even show you the sites that it's connected to. So these are the accounts that I have, and this one particularly is connected, and particularly on the Sepolia network. So yeah, if I want, I can disconnect. When I disconnect and I check my wallet, it should show me that the accounts have actually been disconnected. So when I click connect, I can connect here. Now I want us to observe. So this is our code for the interface that we're building. And then our contract is somewhere. Our contract is here. So it's at 0.0. It's at 0. It's at 0 right now. But I want to deposit some tokens that are on this account. Okay, I have 0.05 Sepolia here, so I want to deposit 0.01. 0.01. Let's see if it actually works. When I click deposit, if my account is connected, so because of time, I don't want to spend a lot of time on designing the interface, but I just want to focus on the functionality. And then maybe if we have some time, I'll show you a few things we can do to make the interface more intuitive for the user, particularly using the features of Web3 components, essentially. So someone could be able to see their address. Also, they could be able to switch the address. For some people, especially that haven't had experience with Web3 tools, you could put all that functionality on the interface. If they want to switch to a different network, or they want to switch to a different account, you can put it all here by text away. So I want to focus on the core functionality. So here, I'm going to send Sepolia 0.01 to the contract, because this safe is designed to work with the contract according to the logic that we wrote. When I confirm, should definitely be able to send those tokens to the contract. I can review the progress of my contract, of my transaction, or I can also put a load down the interface so that someone can see how far the transaction has gone, whether it's going through or it has failed. And yeah, so it confirmed. I should be able able to see that that amount is on my contract here. After a moment, so that is exactly the same contract address, right? Yeah, I take a while to display, but it should be able to show us that. Deposit, withdraw. Okay, so this is the function that we're going to integrate now. Now, even here on the Explorer, I should be able to see that amount, and you can see it reads here that it has 0.01 ETH. That's the amount that I sent. To verify if it actually did that, I can send yes, Shanice, there will be a recording. Yeah, so I'm recording right now. There will be a recording. So 0.001 perhaps. So right now we have 0.01, but I'm adding a 0.001. Welcome, Shanice. And when I deposit, it will increase the amount of the contract. You should be able to see that even on the Explorer. That's how public the information is. So when I confirm this, I can see the progress of the transaction here, or even on the Explorer if I have the transaction hash. And I think I do have the transaction hash because I requested for it in my straight. This is the transaction hash for the most recent transaction. Yeah, here. This is just a notification from Google telling me my transaction is complete. This should also show. Let me just refresh it. Okay, yeah, it reads 0.021. Oh, yes. I think we didn't withdraw the tokens. We didn't withdraw the 0.01 tokens we sent. This was 2 days ago, this is 2 minutes ago. I should be able to see even the very last transaction. There should be 3, yes. And then the one I've just done 45 seconds ago is right here. So it all adds up to that amount. It should be able to show here as well. But I totally understand why it's not showing here. So usually this recognizes tokens that you've sent within that particular session. Maybe through this entire this specific environment. But this is a very contract. This is the very contract that we're using. We're interacting with. Maybe I could refresh and see. Let me first copy it. So now the user is able to deposit tokens. After they've deposited tokens, they should be able to withdraw an amount that is equivalent to the amount that they deposited. Let's see, was that taken care of in our contract? So we have a mapping here called deposit details, and this is the one that was implemented for this purpose. So someone deposits tokens, the address that was deposited and the amount that has been deposited are both supposed to be recorded. When we continue down here, when someone is withdrawing, it's actually checked if the person has that amount of the contract. First check for if the amount they required to withdraw is less than or equal to the amount they have on the contract. So we're checking this on the mapping. Now when you put in the mapping, and the key of the mapping, it returns the value. So the value is supposed to be an integer, which is what was recorded here as the amount that they deposited. So a lot of functionality could be added, like if someone was making multiple deposits, the value should be added on top of their account, not create another account for them on the mapping. So that hasn't been accounted for, but the advantage is if you want to make some changes on your contract, It is, and you've already integrated. It's really simple. Simply make the changes to the contract, pick the new contract address, replace it with the old contract address on your front end here. Simply change this contract address, and everything else will work according to the new logic that you deployed, because that will be entirely access to a new contract. Although the API might change depending on the changes that you made, but you can also replace that. I think that's a much easier modification than you having to go through modifying your entire front-end interface for the changes that you made on your contracts. And also, you can write contracts that are upgradable, um, but that's something we can talk about later after we finish this. So yes, I think we're left with integrating this. I refreshed because I wanted to see if it will display the tokens on the contract. Well, it doesn't, but at least we have it here, because this is exactly the same contract, 0.021, so this is the amount that we have on the contract. And now let's try to integrate the withdraw function. So I'm going to put it here, and all this can be designed in a way that makes it more intuitive for the user. But this is exactly the logic, the core functionality for this particular application. And yeah, so what's the next thing here? Get into the code. And this is where we were. This is where we were. This is the information that we picked about the contract. Then we were doing all our code here. So this is the deposit function. These are just state variables to hold the information that the user has entered. So this is for the account, and that's for the amount that the user enters that they want to withdraw. So as we continue downwards, connect button, the disconnect button. Yeah, so here now I want to add the functionality for withdrawing. So still the user can enter the amount they want to withdraw. I'm just going to copy this and paste it down. Just change a few things. So still I'm going to define another set to withdraw. Set to withdraw amount. So I'm going to define this up here as a state variable, so that we can access it. So I'm defining another state variable that is going to be responsible for holding the withdraw amount. So the user can enter this first variable here, state variable, is for the amount for depositing, although the name is not very appropriate. I could have called it set deposit amount. So I'm going to call this withdraw amount. Withdraw amount. Then the modify function there. So for those that are not familiar with React, what I'm defining, this is our using the use state hook. So when you're using use state, you have to first import it from React, the React library, and this is how you use it. You declare two things essentially. You declare the variable where the values will be stored, and the function that is going to be responsible for modifying the value of that variable. Then you can also give the variable an initial value here, depending on the type that you want. In TypeScript, you even have to specify the type that variable can store. If it's going to be stored in strings, you need to specify it here. It's going to be stored in strings. So if you put an integer here, it will raise an error. That's the advantage with TypeScript, that You don't have to keep checking for the type of the values that you're storing inside a variable. It is implemented directly within the language itself. That if you try to enter a wrong type, because sometimes you could be entering the values through a variable. So a variable is storing a value, maybe in another variable, but the value that is storing is not of the type that that variable is supposed to hold. So with TypeScript, it's implemented within. It's easy for you to see the errors, and that's the difference. That's where JavaScript becomes a little bit complicated. So if I want to see the value of the variable of the value that is stored in a certain variable, I have to check the type, maybe through the console. I have to always find where I'm going to print it in the console. So it becomes really tedious. Yeah, that's where TypeScript comes in really handy and helpful. But since we're using JavaScript here, we don't have to specify the type that this variable is going to store. So every time I enter a value into this input, so the input you already get it on the interface. As you can see, it's here. Oh, I should call this withdraw, and you should call a different function. The function which we're actually going to define withdraw. Yeah, so we have that. Now here, the user can then enter the amount they want to withdraw. We can also create um, something that allows them to see the balance that they have on the contract. Maybe I'll put it here. Actually, we're going to add some of those little features. I'm going to perhaps put it up here, that they can see the balance they have on the contract. Then there's something we shall also learn as we do that. So I'm supposed to change this function. Let me define the function I want to call. I'm going to call it withdraw here, then I define it. Function withdraw. I'm going to define the function disconnect. Let me put it just below deposit so that we can see what we're doing. So you can define the function like this, kind of like a variable. And since it's going to be interacting with an external service, we need to make it asynchronous. What asynchronous does is that it waits on certain operations that are being marked with the keyword await. You see this? It's a keyword await. So it waits on that operation to return a result before it continues executing. And why that is necessary is because external services respond according to different conditions. Because you may have to wait on a user to maybe allow a certain operation in the wallet, like this one, for instance. For it to return a result for you, the user has to sign the transaction. Now, before that result is returned, the compiler should not do any other thing. It should wait for the user to do something with for that operation to return a result before anything else can be processed. If that result was being depended on for something else in the code, then it's going to raise errors because the user hasn't responded yet. Get the point? So that is why we use the async keyword. It's used for asynchronous operations that don't run in the normal sequence of code. They wait on a user or they wait on some result to be returned from an external service before execution can continue. So it could be an API call. So you might not know how long it will take for a server to respond and return a result for you. So it's safe for you to use an asynchronous operation because then even if the result takes 2 hours, I think you've seen sites where it's always showing something that it's loading and loading and loading. It's usually because the external service has not yet responded and it's supposed to respond first before operations can continue. So I want to mute these notifications. It's okay. Just a moment. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do here. Defining a function called withdraw. Then inside this function withdraw, I'm going to write my operations. So you remember when I told you what a wallet client does? That it enables us to interact with a blockchain through an RPC that was defined in our wallet. So two things: your wallet contains your account, and your account gives you rights to do certain things on a certain. So your wallet contains your private key, sorry. Your private key gives you rights to modify state changes through a certain account that is on the blockchain. So this account that you see here, sorry, put on the same page. So this account that you have here, this account is on the Sepolia network. Of course, it exists on all those other networks. But for you to modify certain state associated with this account on the Sepolia network, you need to have the private key associated with this account. And for you to access that storage slot on the blockchain, where this account has information that you can modify with the key, with access using with the access of the private key that it's associated with, you need to go through a node. A node is just a participating machine, a participating validator on that network. So each of those nodes has an identifying link called an RPC. So every network, as you see it here, when I try to edit it, it has all the information about that network and how this particular wallet instance connects to that network. So it's the Sepolia network, and this is the RPC URL. So that means there is a node that is identified by this link, sepolia.infura.io. Now, every time you're running transactions, you're signing transactions, they are being channeled through that node and accepted on the network through that node. So the reason why we use a wallet client here is that it's an interface, a code interface, not a graphical user interface where you click. It's an interface that gives you access to that wallet which is connected on the browser, and through that wallet then you can access the blockchain through the RPC. So when you're sending a transaction, it goes with all the rights. I mean the private key that signed the transaction, the account that maybe is going to be sending the tokens, how much is it going to be sending, all that information goes with the transaction as call data. And then through that RPC, it's processed on the blockchain. But for it to go through the wallet, for it to go through a wallet extension, you have to accept that it goes through a wallet extension. That is why we put a wallet client. What gives you your code access to that wallet. So there are other kinds of clients. There's a public client that just reads the information from the blockchain. You don't need to sign a transaction through your wallet. You shall see one of those where we're displaying the balance. You don't have to do anything with our wallet. It just reads the information from the blockchain and displays it on the interface. So we use a wallet client when we want the user to sign a transaction. That is when we create a wallet client. Where is it? Create something like this. So there's something else called a public client, and we're going to import it here, and I'll show you how it works. The only difference is everything that a public client, a wallet client does. So this is how you define it. You specify what chain it's going to be working on, and then the transport is just the communication mechanism it's going to be using. So in this case, it's going to be using a custom communication mechanism, window.ethereum. So window.ethereum, particularly the object Ethereum, is injected into the browser by the extension. So this is like giving access to your wallet extension. Okay? So that's the custom transport. It's a mechanism of communication that your interface, your particular site is going to be using to communicate with the blockchain. It's going to be communicating through that channel, window.ethereum, which is an object that is injected by your extension. In this case, we have MetaMask. We've been using MetaMask. So MetaMask injects that object into the browser. And if you tap into that object, then you can access the wallet and do all sorts of things with that wallet. You can connect accounts, you can disconnect accounts. When you look down here, when we are connecting the account, do you see what we did? We requested accounts through that object. So it gives us access to the wallet that injected this object. So we requested accounts through this object. And then when we disconnected accounts, we still made the request through this object. And we disconnected the accounts using this code. The code is very specific. You might just have to go through it. So there are different methods. So that object has different methods. One of them is this, requesting accounts. Another is this is a number of them. It's quite a number of them. So this one is for revoking permissions. There are several kinds of permissions you can specifically choose to revoke certain permissions, but I wanted to revoke all permissions associated with the connected accounts. That includes the connection to that interface. So when you write this code and connect it to a button, it immediately disconnects the wallet, disconnects the account. So yeah, just a little explanation how it works, how they all work. Those tools. So we have the withdraw function. Now we're going to interact with the withdraw function on the contract. So what do we need? So the command for interacting for making a transaction is called write contract, and you call that command on the wallet client that you created. I don't think I was able to explain this. So it returns a hash, that's why I put a hash here, but I can choose to just ignore and not even store this hash anywhere. Just await on the transaction. But you could use this hash for something later on, because in VM you can actually monitor the transaction through that hash and see if it failed or it progressed. So since it's an external service, I'm going to be waiting on the wallet. I have to wait, and also on the blockchain as well, because as the wallet is allowing you to sign, for the hash to be returned and for the transaction to be complete, we have to wait on the blockchain to process the transaction first. So what is the wallet client? That is the name here. We said it's wallet client. Then we are making, then we are writing the contract. Okay. So it's a method that takes in an object. Then the object has very specific entries. First of all, you need to put in the address that you're writing this. You're going to be writing to. So what's the address? We saved our address with a specific name. I think it was called address. The name is right here. I can actually write it here. Right there, it's called address. So if you've done JavaScript before, an object takes in key value pairs. So this is the key, that's a value. Then you put a comma and enter the second value. So what is the second value? It's supposed to be the API, the blueprint of your contract that is going to tell your interface how to arrange the transaction that is going to allow to send through. So the API, that's the key. What's the name of our API? API in uppercase. API. Then a comma, then the function name. So what function are we going to be calling this contract? We're specifically going to be calling what function. So all the functions are defined here. But if you have your code, you can actually go back to your code. I think I have my code here. It's called withdraw in lowercase. I'm supposed to write it exactly as it is, because the casing of the function is just critical. If you miss out any character or write it wrongly, the transaction will fail. Because it will be looking for a function that doesn't exist on the contract. So what's the function name? It's supposed to be a string. Withdraw. That's the function name. Does it have any arguments? So arguments are those entries that are specified by the user and they are used by the contract rather by the function later on. It doesn't have to be the user, it might be Within the contract itself, there might be other functions that are calling a certain function and then putting entries through that function. So these are arguments. They are inputs into the function. So it takes in a uint which specifies the amount that the user wants to withdraw. Okay. So now that's where we put the arguments here. So args is the keyword. Then all the arguments are supposed to be in an array. So what argument am I taking in? An integer. Are you going to 56? So now it is supposed to represent the value that the user wants to withdraw, but it's supposed to be converted in a very specific way. Now I think this is where I can actually talk about way and ether. So let me demonstrate it here. Let me put if I can access the razor pad, because the razor pad will make more sense for us to come back to it later. I think I didn't put it here, it might be here. Oh, yeah, it's here. So remember how I was talking about cents and cent, a dollar, and then a cent, a dollar. Okay, you can see all. I was talking about a cent, a dollar, and a penny. The denominations of exactly the same thing. It's the American currency, as we know it. Because here we have shillings, we just have shillings. Nothing more than that. So here now I want to demonstrate the difference between, let me put it up here so that it's more visible. Let me call it ether denominations. I hope you can see my screen. Ether denominations. So ether can be put in a number of denominations. Some of them are actually written here for us. And we're going to see how each relates to the other. I think they were put here. I saw them they're usually here. So ether can be represented in a number of ways. It can be represented as ether, can be represented as gwei, can be represented as wei, can be represented as fini, and there's a number of others. These are just different points at which the value is broken down and creates a whole number, then it's given a name. Just like a million, 1 million is an equivalent of how many 1,000s? I don't know. How many 20,000s? About 20. I think they're actually 20. So I want to talk about three major ones: wei, wei, and wei. So a single ether an ether is an Ethereum token, as you know it. So most of the time when we're sending tokens around this, they are represented in ether. As you can see here, even in my wallet, it's represented in ether. But in the background, so you can see I have 0.0388 Sepolia ETH. So if I was on mainnet, this would still be ETH. Okay, just the only difference is the keyword Sepolia won't be there, but it will still be ETH. Okay, so most of what we see on the interface, the tokens are represented in that denomination, ETH, which is the highest, which is the largest denomination in the representation of Ethereum currencies. So these others are really lower than it. Gwei is lower than it, wei is lower than it. That means one ether is equivalent to a certain amount of wei, and still one ether is equivalent to a certain amount of wei. Now here, the demonstration is 1 ETH is equivalent to 1 times 10 to the power 9. Good. So I want to make a reference between Gwei and ETH very specifically because then it will be easy for us to understand it. And then 1 ETH is still equivalent to 1 times 10 to the power, let me use Harriet, this makes more sense, to the power 18. Although in programming, the two asterisks represent a power. Yes, so 1 ether is equivalent to 1 times 10 to the power 18 Wei. So this also means that we have 1 and 18 zeros. That will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now that is 1 ETH represented in Wei. Now in terms of Wei, 1 ETH has 9 zeros. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is 1 ETH in Wei. Then this is 1 ETH in Wei. Now, you may wonder why they are whole numbers. The thing is, Solidity does not deal with decimals. If you've noticed, when we're writing our code, we didn't write decimals at all. What is our code? I think it's right here. We didn't write decimals at all. You see that? Oh, we actually didn't do any calculations either. But let me demonstrate something here that will make more sense in that context. So perhaps if we're making a safe, right? So if we're maybe taking away 2% from that money, the person deposits them will take away 2% as profit, or maybe ledger charges that every month we charge them a certain amount. Normally we would calculate 2% like 2 divided by 100. This would give us an equivalent of 0.02. And then maybe we can multiply this with a certain amount, maybe the amount. So it gives us 2% of that amount. Now the problem with this calculation is it will always end up in a 0 because Solidity truncates the decimals, it removes them and remains only the decimal with a whole number. So this will always end up being a 0, as the whole number here is a 0. And we should actually demonstrate it perhaps. Since we've already deployed our contract, we don't have to worry about that. So the concept I'm demonstrating is very critical. We should pay attention to it because you can easily make errors, very critical errors. So not call it, not just call it Wei. Demonstrate this concept. I want it to be external. I want it to be external. I'm going to define a state variable here. Make it public. I won't call it Wei still. Then I don't give Wei a value. Is it within a function or is it within? Maybe this is the keyword. Oh yeah, the name was the same. Okay, so I want this to be external. Then I want to calculate something. Maybe I want 2% of a number. Let me say 2. Let me just want to calculate 2%. So I'm going to say Wei is equal to 2 out of 100. I've actually done this up there. Why is there an error? Identifier. Okay, let me try to change this to something else. to divide by 100. I should actually be able to calculate this rational is not implicit convertible. Okay, let me try to just typecast this. So the other thing is okay, I want to make this calculation. Let me try to use a lower number, see what happens. I'm trying to see how I can make a calculation that will make more sense. It doesn't even allow it. What can I do? Let me see. Maybe 15%. See if it works. It should be able to work. So you can see it's trying to convert it. Okay, let me try making it an assigned integer. Still doesn't work. How best can I demonstrate this? Okay, trying to think of how to demonstrate the concept of solidity not being able to handle whole numbers, rather decimal numbers. Let me say maybe 0.02. What result does it give us? Still doesn't make sense. So it's a fraction. It's a fraction. How best can I do this? If I had done this, let me see. Because this would be okay, let's see that. Maybe this is the issue. Yes, then. Hello.
I think it is going away. Maybe you can first go on with that.
Hospital?
That may be.
Hmm.
Can first go on with that. I think the error is going away.
First leave it here. Okay, let me.
Uh, I was thinking. Uh, okay, maybe you can first continue. I think maybe I was thinking of adding something like, but I've tried it. It's not working. So first continue, then maybe let me also debug on my end.
Yeah, okay, so I wanted to demonstrate the concept, but it's not doing what I want. Of course, this is going to focus on the whole number in typical programming. But yeah, the point is, if the whole number is a zero in solidity, it is always going to be returning as 0. So any calculations that return as 0, I don't know, there's a way I used to do it, I don't remember how. It requires a bit of typecasting, but I can't remember if I was converting them to bytes, but okay, so this number will always return to a 0. We always resolve to a 0. So all your calculations will be compromised. So if you're calculating something like this, it would be best to use the alternative, which is maybe first multiply the percentage that you're multiplying with the amount, then you can divide it all by 100. Because that will give you exactly the same result, but you will have bypassed the whole idea of the whole concept of returning your what? A decimal. So that is exactly the same reason why all these denominations are in whole numbers. They are a representation of ether in a lower value. So if it was maybe an equivalent of 0.1 ETH, which would be a decimal, is this value less by 1 0. So instead of 18 zeros, it would be 17 zeros. You get the point? So it's still a whole number recognized on Ethereum in EVM as a whole number, but its equivalent reduces in value in terms of ETH into a decimal. So all the transactions that you're going to make, why you see that even the amount that we use is new into 56 format, is because it's supposed to be in this value, the lowest value in ETH, which is Wei. So all the value that you have of ETH tokens recognized in your contract is in Wei. But on the interface, while it's being displayed, it's displayed in terms of ETH. And there's a number of functions that can do this. You can even do a manual calculation yourself that converts Wei to ETH. But I prefer to use the functions because they do exist. So there's a function for this is the amount we have now. There's a function in VM. VM is the library we're using right now to integrate our smart contracts. So there's a number of other libraries. You can use ethers. So the code, the syntax might be different, and the components might be different. Because for ethers, we use different components. Even for Wagma, you might use different components. But I usually use VM a lot because it integrates well with most of those other libraries. So it can use some tools from ethers, can use some tools from VM, rather than from Wagma directly. That's why I use it a lot because it's more like at the center of all these applications, all these tools. But you can use Wagma if we had. Maybe I'll use Wagma and show you how it's done. But let's see how we can do it with VM. Then we can learn others with the foundation of this one. So yeah, we have our client. Now you see this method pass ether. Passing in programming is simply converting something into its smaller components. Okay. So when the user enters amounts in ether, they are converted to the equivalent in Wei, to their equivalent in Wei. Okay. So they're supposed to pass the value that they've entered into Wei. But even MetaMask will convert it back to ETH. That's why you see ETH when you're trying to sign the transaction. But in other words, it recognizes it as Wei in the background. So that's why inside here, instead of just entering the value that the user has entered, I am passing ether. I'm converting the value that they've entered into Wei. Okay. So what is the variable that is going to have this amount? It's called withdraw amount. Now this variable will always contain the value that the user has put to withdraw. How do I know that? Because it's the value that they enter here. Then when I click the withdraw button, it should be able to do this. Oh, it's here. So yeah, I went through that entire explanation so that we would understand that. Then we have to specify which account is going to be signing this transaction. So you might have two accounts that are connected, but the one that is going to sign the transaction is not the active account. So that's why you're supposed to specify the account so that maybe the active account doesn't have a balance, so the transaction might keep failing, but you don't know why. This might be very obvious things to someone that has been in the ecosystem and done transactions for a while, but someone that is just coming into the ecosystem, you need to make things easy for them so that they don't have a frustrating experience learning how to use Web3 tools. So in this case, when you're specifying the account, you're making it easier. So for as long as it's connected, even if the active account is different, this will be the account that signs the transaction. Now I want to see what's the name of the account. So the account is going to be stored here. Now this state variable also picks the account when the wallet is connecting. So after we requested accounts, this will return an array of accounts if more than one account is connected. Even if only one account is connected, it will return an array with one value. So, like I said, this is a request through that Unreal Ethereum object to access the accounts in that wallet. Then all the connected wallets, all the connected accounts will be stored here. So I was choosing to print it and then storing just the very first account, which is the active account, within my state variable. So I'm just going to take it from the state variable and put it here. So what name did I give it? I said it's called account. So this is the account that I'll be connecting, that I'll be using to sign the transaction. And then you remember when we were doing deposit, we had another entry here called value. So you only use this if you're sending ETH tokens, and depending on the chain that you're building on, because different EVM chains have different native currencies, but most EVM chains use ETH as their native currency. So that is if they are layer 2s especially. The layer 1s, most Ethereum compatible layer 1s have their own native currency, most of them. So if you're building on Avalanche, this will not be Ether, but the methods are exactly the same. If you're building on Celo, the methods will be exactly the same, but now you will not be sending ETH, you'll be sending Celo tokens. But if you're building on Sepodia or Ethereum itself or any other L2 on ETH, maybe an optimistic rollup, you, especially the optimistic rollups, I think we looked at them in the very first sessions. You will use ETH, you'll be sending ETH across from your account either to a contract or a different account, externally owned account. So this method will always be the same, and it converts tokens from the ETH denomination to the WAY denomination, which is the denomination that has 18 decimals. Now, what I was explaining is when you're sending tokens along with the function call, that's when you use this method. So you're making a function call while sending tokens along. Now that is where a function is supposed to be payable, so that it's able to receive this amount of tokens when they are being sent to it. Okay? You remember when we talked about that? The user-defined payable function, then the receive function and the fallback function. This is the amount, this is how you send tokens using the user-defined function. So for the receive function, you don't even have to define it. Just send tokens from your wallet to the contract. Then it will do whatever was defined in the receive function. Yeah, I think that's all. So this is all we need for us to be able to withdraw. Then we need to specify an amount. But maybe the user can have a display of how much they have, because if they put an amount that is higher, the transaction is going to fail. But since we haven't made our interface intuitive yet so that they can see what has really happened, for now we should just be looking at it in the backend interfaces, maybe on the Explorer or maybe in the console. But whatever happens, we shall be able to maybe make a better display as we go. So I'm going to add a few features after this. So the user deposited certain amount. I believe it is this very address. So now all those things have to be displayed for the user to make it easy for their experience. The account they've connected, how much money does it have on the contract, it makes it really easy for someone to know how to move forward so that they don't put an amount that is higher than they actually have accessible to them under contract. So I want to withdraw some tokens from this contract using this withdraw function. This is the one I was using. I think I was on Chrome. Yeah, I think I was here. Okay, so this account made a deposit, I believe. Did it interact with our contract? 0AEB3. Let's see, is that our contract address? 0AEB, yes it is. So it made that deposit. Now I want to withdraw. I think I deposited 0.01 tokens, so I want to withdraw 0.003 tokens. ETH rather. When I click withdraw, it should prompt my wallet still, because this is a transaction. I'm supposed to be the one that signs this transaction. Unless there's an issue, you can always view. Account not found. Oh, I think I haven't connected yet. Is this account connected? Let me verify. It's actually connected. Disconnect. This account ends with what? 948. Let me confirm if it actually had a transaction here. 948, I did. Deposited that amount, also deposited that amount. So the issue with React, and I think this Next.js also has this, sometimes the state variables take long to pick a value. So you may try to run a transaction and it's not working. Like this array right now has one value. So it's the array that was returned when you requested that account. So sometimes it may take long to actually have a value. Like you have to refresh before the value comes. Can cause a bit of issues, but I think that's an issue with React itself. You always just have to be aware of it. So now we can sign with this transaction, rather with this account. Is this the account? Really? That's a different account. And then confirm. Maybe this is being cut. Oh yeah, I think it was just being cut off. So when I click to withdraw, this transaction is likely to fail. Why is it likely to fail? I don't know why it's saying that. Maybe I could find out. Interacting that contract, yes, that's our smart contract. You do not have enough Sepolia in your account to pay for network fees. That's funny. Let me confirm. So I have an issue here. Maybe let me request for some more. If someone has Sepolia, you can as well send me some tokens, because I think I'm being stopped by that. Let me put my address in the chat. Someone has Sepolia, yeah, you can send some that address without the square bracket at the end. Let me just try to get more Sepolia anyway. So, oh, I had used this one. I didn't know. Which account have I not used? Okay, trying to see that I can get more tokens. Yeah, maybe let me share from this other device. I think I have some sample here. Just give me a moment, please. Saying it's failing because my tokens are low, although I think I thought they were enough. But if someone has tokens, you could as well share some. Okay. Meanwhile, does anyone have a question? You could share. If you have any question, you could just raise your hand and let me know. Okay, I should be done in about 2 minutes. Shouldn't take really long. Just want to send tokens to the account so that it has enough to withdraw that amount. Yes, so it's transferring to be able to receive any amount. Right. Yeah, so let me try it again. When I attempt to withdraw 0.003, unless there's another reason it's failing, I click confirm, should be able to confirm and return those tokens back to this wallet. Spending. Oh, that's failed. Maybe there's an issue with our contract logic. We can take a look at it. What is the contract? I think it's here. Okay, the deposit was successful. You can see all the deposits were working perfectly. Let me try to verify why there might be an issue right now. So from our contract logic, don't mind this. This we just put right now, we didn't even deploy it. Let me first remove it so that it doesn't confuse us. Yeah, I think this was the contract. So when you look at the logic, here for example, when I put this service, does it have any tokens, deposit details? Oh, it has 0. So I didn't report. But this is what the deposit function is supposed to do. Takes the value of the calling function and codes that the amount that they put on the contract. Deposit details. Yeah, deposit details. But I think this is now for me to have excuse me. Let me try to verify this contract. I think I should be able to see its variables. Yeah. So what I'm doing here is verifying the contract, making its code accessible to anyone else. I think that was the entire code base. Yeah. Should be able, I think there's nothing else. No. Okay, let's leave this to take us a while to finish. But so far we can, I don't know whether the withdraw function is failing because we've at least withdraw. Let me see, did I type everything correctly? Because this could all be reasons for the function to fail, maybe because the function I was trying to access doesn't exist on the contract. Function name, those are the arguments. Okay. Yeah, everything seems to be okay. The address, the API. Let me take a look here. Deposit details is a mapping. With function is called review. So these minor errors, if it's because of any of these errors, they will really frustrate you. I think that's it. Withdraw amount. It's called withdraw amount. Oh yeah, I think I know what the issue is. No, I wrote it wrongly everywhere, so it should have worked. Let me just correct it and set withdraw amount. Then the value. Yeah. Yeah, that is it. Set so let me try it again and see what's wrong. Sometimes may even have to refresh. Okay, it's refreshed. We have a connected account. 94E. So we have a deposited amount. Let me try to withdraw 0.01. Perhaps do I have gas? Yes, I have enough. So when I click withdraw, transaction is likely to fail. Why? I don't know what I'm missing out, but might be a minor issue somewhere. This is all part of troubleshooting, so it's not always going to be straightforward. So while you're writing your code, you might make a small error. You have to rectify it. Let me first see what's up. Maybe there's something I need to verify. You do not have this balance. I do not have this balance. Yeah, the issue is with the logic now. Because you see this? This is a statement we put for the require keyword. So let me see, did you do something wrong? Did you write it wrongly? You see what it says here, you do not have this balance. Because the amount I've entered, ideally it is higher than the amount I have on the contract. That's why I wanted to verify and see how much. So it's not recording, I don't know why. When I clicked the deposit function, it wasn't recording. Because it's supposed to store this value there. The amount that I've deposited. Deposit details. Okay. Maybe I deployed it before I had corrected this, I'm not sure. Let me try deploying it again. We can always test, we have enough sample here if to test it again. So let me deploy this sample. Oh, I was checking it on my own. I think that's why it wasn't showing. I have to check it with the poly activated here. Okay. Let me just watch a mix here. Give me a moment. I try to fix this. If it doesn't work, I'll have to look at it later maybe, but give it a try. So it should be able to show me. Oh, the site is actually here. Because this is the, I think this is the one we deployed. We deployed from this environment, this particular one. Were there any changes? There is nothing different here. But it's okay. Let me get the contract address and see how much this particular account has. Okay, that's the safe. Then we should get the contract address. Should give us yeah, so this is what I was waiting for. I needed to connect my account and be on the Sepolia network. Then this address, I want to see how much it has on the contract. Maybe it will even be able to display the balance here. So it's on Sepolia, yes. Yeah, so you can see the balance here. So we're on a wrong network. So this account has this amount. I don't know what this is. What's the equivalent of this in not in if, but I can find out. There are converters everywhere. You can always convert and find out. Or you can read, just read it and calculate it. But it will take you a while. So I prefer to just always convert from here. That's exactly 0.001. That's the amount I'm supposed to withdraw. Really? Okay. I thought I had more than that with this account. So that's what this account has. This specific account. Let me withdraw something less. 0.01 perhaps. So there's an issue with the logic. I need to look at it. So I'll receive this amount. Oh yes, I get the point. Okay. Well, I didn't request for the transaction hash, but should be able to deposit those tokens here in a moment. Spending 0. Let's see what happens in a moment. You can even view this on the Explorer. It's confirmed, and you can see the amount actually increased here. So you can see this transaction on the Block Explorer. Oh, it's not finalized yet, but yes. It's not settled yet, but it's processing. Okay, so you can see everything. I made a call to the withdraw method on that contract. Okay, by this using this account on that contract. It was successful, and it was deployed on that block. It was stored on that block. That's the transaction hash. It was made to that contract. So all the information is stored here. The value now, this value here represents an amount that is sent to the contract within that transaction, but we weren't sending any tokens, we were withdrawing tokens. So you can see all the transaction information here. Now when you go back to the contract itself to show you what kind of transaction it was, maybe if I look at the transactions, I can see all these failed 1 minute ago. I want to be able to see this. So I think this is the transaction I last did. Maybe I could refresh. Yes, the last transaction that I did, I called the withdraw function 1 minute ago. And yeah, so the tokens were sent. And when we look at the contract, the value must have reduced by that amount. You see now the value is actually less by that amount of 0.00. Even this, okay, I don't think I changed all those things. So we made a really simple contract. It wasn't really tracking the value as well. So right now that this person has withdrawn the tokens, the amount that they have on the contract must be reduced. Get the point, but we don't have the logic for that. I was trying to do something very simple and it has issues as you can see. I think that's why even withdrawing was causing issues. So ideally, they have an account, so when they withdraw, the amount they have on the account should reduce. This simple math, but as you can see in the withdraw function, when they when we check the amount they have, and then now I understand what happens. So I think we have withdrawn the amount. Rather, we didn't record the very first amount that they deposited. Yeah, so now the amount they had was 0.001 on the contract. That is the amount that was deposited. So we're trying to withdraw an amount higher than what they have. and they might have withdrawn the balance already, some of the balance. So as you can see here, all we have is the withdrawal function is taking how much they have on the contract and then sending them the tokens. That's all. So we don't we so even right now when I check this deposit details function, it still shows me the amount they have is the amount they had even before withdrawing. So you get the point? And this is not correct. I mean, they've withdrawn some of their money, so why should this still read the same amount? It's just like having another bank account that still reads you have 100K after you've withdrawn 150K. Yeah, that makes sense, I believe. So I hope, are there any questions up to this point? I would love to continue. So the contract was really simple, and I think I needed to make some things more clear when I was writing it. So because of time anyway, I tried to keep it simple, but there's some logic that was missing, some fundamental logic in how it should operate that was missing. Otherwise, does anyone have any questions? So I want to maybe display the balance that this person has on the contract using a public client so that they can know how much they have on the contract. But it should also be modifiable with every withdrawal. Okay? Okay, I'm just going to do the balance, and then maybe we can close. So VM the library has a number of functionalities. You can call them depending on what things you want to do within your front end. There's a number of functionalities that are available. So it has a documentation. You can actually look for the documentation. You can read through the documentation. And yeah, so far, at least now we can deposit and withdraw. So I want to put the balance up here. Someone can be able to see it. I'm thinking of where to put it, so I'm going to use a use effects. So use effect is also another React tool, but this one runs automatically according to certain conditions that are native to what? Certain conditions that are native to React. I can't go into them right now, but yeah. Let me put it down here. Okay, so inside here is where I'm going to write my code. Now I want to have a specific state variable called balance. Yeah. Set the balance as a state variable. So this is the last thing we'll be doing, just to show you how you could use something like this. So in this case now I want to create a public client, but I could also use a wallet client. Just want to show you how to create a public client. So it's everything is exactly the same really, but of course you have to import that component from VM. Create public client. I'm going to create it here. You should really give your variables appropriate names, so I'm going to call mine public client. Yeah, call it like that. So just text and I'm detecting what chain I'm going to be interacting with. Support here specifically. And then the transport here is different. Since I don't have to go through the wallet, I could just use an HTTP request, HTTP call. And yeah, I should be able to get all that information. Yeah, that's what I need for now. it to return for me the balance. So I'm going to call it account balance. Yeah, call it account balance like this. So I'm calling this method still on the public client now. Public client. But specifically, I'm going to be calling a read contract this time. I'm just going to read from the blockchain, not write to the blockchain. And this is supposed to be asynchronous inside an asynchronous function. So I will do this. I'm going to call it all balance. So the reason I got method function asynchronous because that would be now DB to React, but let's focus on this. Yeah, then I can call all balance here. Maybe see where to print this value of I called it what? I called it balance. Yes, I'm going to print the balance value here. Or I can see it just below the word save, so that it's visible to us. I'm going to print it as maybe a heading too. And inside here, I'll print balance. Okay. I can say balance is. Now I can go back here, then continue to write my code. So what was I doing? So when I receive the balance, what do I need first of all? I need to know the address that I'm checking. Unfortunately, so there's an issue that still within the logic. Now, usually on the front end, especially with VM, let me see if we can do that. Most of the state variables, like we have a mapping here, they are not visible. Most of the state variables are not visible at all. So you have to call the values. You're supposed to call the state variables in a read function, in a get function, then it returns those values for you on the front end. Because they are typically not visible, you have to decode them. But let me try this out. It should be able to work actually. Because we have the where is that the view function deposit. We have this on the API. So I'm going to call this mapping in the API directly. And pass in one argument, then see what it returns for us. So it has inputs. Does it have an input? Yes, the input is the address, which is supposed to be a string also. That specific account. Thing here. So the address, what is the address? That's the address. Then the API. Just trying to rush through it so that I don't spend a lot of time on it. Just want to show you some of the things that it can do. So in this case, for the function name I'm calling is this one. Then the arguments it takes in, just takes in an address. So what is the address? Our account. The account that we connected. So this is sufficient, and it should run on its own. And then when it returns for maybe the account balance here, okay, account balance. Yeah, I want to store this in a state variable. I think I called it set balance. set balance, then I pass in the account balance for that account. So this account is a connected account and its balance should display. Yeah, I think this is it. HTTP is not always undefined. Okay, there's just a little error with the code, but it's easy to fix. HTTP. Let's quickly over to that's the transport we're going to be using. So the balance is that. Let me try to refresh. Undefined. Let me connect the address. So you should be able to display the balance of that account on that contract. It's not working. Put it in use effects, but okay, yeah, this makes complete sense. So usually you're supposed to have a get function that can return all those results for you. So I can understand why this isn't working because it's interacting with the mapping directly. Okay, the address is here. Let me see if there's anything I could correct. Otherwise, this is yeah, I think this was a wonderful implementation. So just reading information from here. Okay, that's the account. Set balance, do that. Then display the balance here. The balance is that. Let me check if it's actually receiving the balance. Perhaps maybe there might be an issue that I'm not being able to see. So it should display it in way. So if I had a get function that I had implemented in my contract, I'll be able to display this information directly. Otherwise, because I think we're interacting. So it's not actually receiving the balance. Let me attempt to connect. So I requested that it be printed here, but it's not showing at all. Yeah, but that tells me everything I need to know. 39. Okay. So maybe I'm going to implement a get function, and then I'll be able to display this and share a repo like I did the other time. Actually, I'll just upgrade the one that I already did. Yeah, but that's all I had for today, unless there are questions. I tried to make it the contract really simple, but things ended up not coming out as I expected. So there's some logic that I had to implement to make it more smoother, more meaningful as an account rather than contract. But yeah, we can implement it and then share the link. Otherwise, are there any questions? Okay. So I hope today was helpful. Maybe those that are interested in doing the Forecaster program, I think everything was shared. And yeah, I'll share the GitHub link to this, so you can always come back to it. And I think I'll modify the contract a little so that it has some of the things that I wanted to have, that I wanted it to have. Yeah. There are no questions. I'd love to stop here. Okay, thank you, Maria. Aloysius. So maybe we could do a simple assignment. So if it is possible, try to build an application of your own. Actually, you will do the same contract that we've done, the save, and then try to integrate it the way we did. So, and share your GitHub link in the Rise Up pad. So, if you share your GitHub link, I'll be able to follow you and be able to see how much you've done. And yeah, maybe there may be a reward for the best performing student. I'm just thinking about it. So, okay, yeah. Have a wonderful evening. And yeah, if Tracy has something to say, perhaps she could come in. I think she had something she wanted to talk about. Is Tracy there?
Hello. Are you still here?
Yeah, Mia.
Okay, I think I just wanted to share about the Karma Gap, but I see people have already left. I think we shall talk about it in the next session. Thank you so much for the session, Emmanuel.
Per on. People are still on, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they are tired. You've over-exhausted them. Okay, we shall talk about it in the next session.
Okay.
Bye.